Iran and Israel, two countries that have never fought each other in an official war. Yet they have been embroiled in a decades-long conflict. Why do two countries that have never shared a border harbor such intense hostility towards each other? Here is the question no one wants to answer honestly. Is it about religion? Is it about land? Is it about power? Or is it about an event that took place 2,500 years ago, which neither side has ever truly been able to forget? This is the part of the story that almost no one knows. Iran and Israel were not always enemies. In fact, for centuries, they were the closest allies the ancient world had ever seen. The story of how that changed is the story of how the entire Middle East came to be as it is today. This is the story of Iran and Israel from the very beginning. The first question is, who were these people, and why did the Persian Empire once save the Jewish people from extinction? Let's start with Chapter 1. Before we talk about the conflict, we need to talk about Cyrus. The story of Iran and Israel does not begin with missiles. It doesn't start with nuclear programs. It doesn't start in 1948 or 1979. It began in 539 BC in Babylon. It began with a king who did something no other conqueror in history had ever done before. He allowed people to return to their homes. Cyrus the Great founded the Achaemenid Persian Empire. It was the greatest empire the world had ever seen up to that point. It stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, and from the Black Sea to the Persian Gulf. The Jewish people had been taken from Jerusalem by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. Their temple had been destroyed. Their city was burned to the ground. Everything that made them who they were had been taken from them, and they were sent into exile. Cyrus looked upon these people. He issued a decree. "Return to your homes," he said. All Jewish people should return to their homes. The Cyrus cylinder, a clay artifact discovered in the ruins of Babylon in 1879 and now housed in the British Museum, commemorates this event. It portrays Cyrus as a king who returned people to their homelands, rebuilding their temples. He brought back their gods. The Jewish people called him the Messiah, the Anointed One. He is the only non-Jewish figure to bear this title in the entire Hebrew Bible. Think about that. The founder of modern-day Iran was viewed by the Jewish people as a messianic figure. This is no footnote. It is fundamental. What Cyrus did was not merely humanitarian. It was a strategic move. An empire as vast as Persia cannot be governed by force alone. It requires cooperation. It requires local rulers. It needs communities that are dedicated to the survival of the empire. The Jewish people were permitted to return to Jerusalem, rebuild their temples, and enjoy autonomy within the Persian system. They became loyal, productive, and integrated members of the Persian Empire. For 2 centuries, from 539 BC to 330 BC, the Persian Empire and the Jewish people coexisted in a partnership-like relationship. 2 cultures, 2 religions, 1 empire. And this arrangement worked well for a long time. So what changed? What happened to make everything take a different turn? Not Iran, not Israel, not religion. It was a Macedonian king with a vast army who marched through the Persian gates, causing the world Cyrus had built to collapse overnight. Alexander the Great conquered Persia in 330 BC. In doing so, he did not merely defeat an empire. He shattered the political framework that had enabled Persians and Jews to coexist for 2 centuries. Those who came after Alexander the Great sowed the first seeds of division between the 2 peoples who had once been the closest of partners. These included fragmentation, rival successor kingdoms, and Persia and Judea gradually drifting onto separate trajectories. Yet the true rupture, the moment when everything changed, permanently occurred 2,000 years later. It did not begin with a war, nor with a conflict. It began with a revolution. This brings us to the topic we'll cover in Part 2. Where did the Persians and the Jewish people stand when this transformation came to an end? We'd be delighted if our friends who followed us this far liked the video and subscribed to our channel. Now, let's move on to part 2. A.D. 622, the Arabian Peninsula. A merchant from Mecca starts receiving revelations. His name is Muhammad. What he started in a small cave outside Mecca would reshape every border, kingdom, and power structure in the known world within a century. This video does not provide a detailed explanation of Islam. Our question is simpler. What effect did the rise of Islam have on the relationship between the Persians and the Jewish people? The answer is everything. First, the Persians. In 622 AD, the Sasanian Persian Empire was one of the two great superpowers of the ancient world. The other was the Byzantine Empire. The two empires had been in conflict for centuries. They were consuming each other. They were exhausting each other. They were spending blood and wealth on wars in which neither side could achieve a decisive victory. Then, from the south, something arrived that neither of them had expected: the first Muslim armies. In 636 AD, just 4 years after Muhammad's death, Arab Muslim forces clashed with the Sasanian Persian army at the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah. The Persians had war elephants. They had professional soldiers. They had military traditions dating back centuries, yet they lost. By 651 AD, the Sasanian Empire had ceased to exist. The last Sasanian king, Yazdegerd III, fled eastward. He was killed by one of his own subjects. The empire that had ruled Persia since 224 CE, 4 centuries of uninterrupted Persian civilization, did not end in a great battle, but with a fugitive king dying alone in a mill. Persia then became part of the Islamic Caliphate. This is precisely what makes this moment so significant for our story. Persia did not simply surrender its identity. It embraced Islam and transformed it from within. The Persian language survived. Persian culture survived too. Persian governance, poetry, and philosophy all survived too. Over the following centuries, Persia did not merely remain part of the Islamic world, it became one of its greatest centers. Shia Islam, the Persian version of Islam, became the defining feature of Iranian identity. Not just a religion, it was a civilization within a civilization. And what of the Jewish people during this period? The early Islamic period was not a time of systematic change or oppression for most Jewish communities. During the early caliphates, the Umayyads and the Abbasids, Jewish communities were generally under protection. They paid taxes, they faced restrictions, yet they could practice their faith. They could sustain their communities. They could carry out their functions. During certain periods, such as in Baghdad under the Abbasid Caliphate, Jewish intellectual and commercial life flourished to a degree that would not be seen again for centuries. This is the missing part of the story. The relationship between the medieval Islamic world and the Jewish people was complex and not merely one of conflict. This relationship was multi-layered. It varied by region, ruler, and century. So, what was the situation in the year 1000 CE? Persia had become a deeply Islamic civilization. A distinct Shiite identity had begun to emerge. Persian culture had not disappeared. It had become interwoven with Islamic civilization. The Jewish people were scattered across the known world. There were Jewish communities in Persia, in North Africa, Spain, and in the Levant. They were surviving. They adapted. They preserved their identity through centuries of exile. Two peoples, both had been profoundly transformed by the same historical force. And yet, they were not yet enemies. The distance between them was growing. But active, deliberate conflict, the shadow conflict, the state-level rivalry we see today, had not yet taken shape. It had not yet clearly taken shape. As in most modern conflicts, this begins with lines drawn on a map. And how did it begin? This brings us to the topic we'll cover in Chapter 3. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed after World War I, what promises did the British make, and how did they lay the groundwork for conflict? Let's talk about that. Please don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. 1948. The State of Israel was declared. Iran, the Iran of Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, became the second Muslim-majority country in the world to recognize it. Iran recognized Israel, officially, diplomatically. They had trade relations. They even had intelligence cooperation. Iranian oil was flowing to Israel. Israeli agricultural experts were working in Iran. Their ambassadors were meeting regularly. Their leaders were holding talks. For 30 years, Iran and Israel were not enemies. They were partners. Why? Because the Shah's Iran had one overriding concern: the Soviet Union to the north. Israel, meanwhile, had a single primary concern: the Arab states surrounding it. Although they had different issues, they shared the same patron, the United States. According to the logic of the Cold War in the Middle East, this made them natural partners. The relationship was never warm. There was never any friendship. But it was real. It was functional. It was built on shared strategic interests. And then came February 1979, the Iranian Revolution. Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile in Paris. The Shah fled. Within a few weeks, one of the most dramatic political transformations of the 20th century had taken place. The Islamic Republic of Iran was declared. Immediately afterwards, the Israeli diplomatic mission in Tehran was handed over to the Palestine Liberation Organization. The Israeli ambassador left. Iran's ambassador to Israel also left. A 30-year partnership came to an end, not gradually, not through negotiations. It happened overnight. Why did the Islamic Republic declare Israel its primary enemy? There are several reasons, and it is worth considering them individually. Firstly, ideology. The new Iranian government defined itself by taking a stance against what it termed American imperialism and Zionism. As America's closest ally in the Middle East, Israel became a symbol of everything the revolution opposed. Secondly, regional power. Following the overthrow of the Shah, Iran required a new identity in the Middle East. Supporting the Palestinian cause gave the Islamic Republic legitimacy in the Arab world, despite Iran being both Persian and Shia rather than Arab and Sunni. Thirdly, and this is an often overlooked aspect, Israel and Iran were now competing for influence in the same region. Every country that Iran sought to influence, Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza, was also a place where Israel had vital security interests. Two regional powers, overlapping spheres of influence, yet there were no diplomatic channels between them. The conditions for a prolonged conflict were now in place. And let's move on to the next section. Iran and Israel have never fought a declared war since 1979. Not once. And yet, for 4 decades, they have been engaged in ongoing and escalating dynamics with extremely severe consequences. Just not ones that resemble a conventional war. It looks like this. Israel entered Lebanon. In response, Iran facilitated the formation of Hezbollah, a Lebanese group that has been engaged in actions against Israel from southern Lebanon for the past 4 decades. The Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires was attacked, resulting in numerous casualties. Then a Jewish community center in Buenos Aires was attacked, resulting in a significant loss of life. The confrontation had gone global. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the pattern deepened. Iran continued to back groups such as Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as various militant organizations across Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, forming what Iranian strategists refer to as the axis of resistance. This is a network of allied groups operating across multiple fronts. Israel responded in kind, not with declarations. Rather, it responds with operations. Several Iranian nuclear scientists have been linked to suspicious deaths or incidents involving vehicle-borne devices and targeted actions. These are the kinds of operations that have no official authorization, but which everyone in the intelligence world understands. The shadow war has its own language and its own rules. Then there's the nuclear question. Iran is developing nuclear capability. Israel watches. It makes clear through every available channel that it will not accept a nuclear-armed Iran. In 2010, the Stuxnet computer virus, widely attributed to a joint American-Israeli operation, disrupted Iranian centrifuges at the Natanz facility. Not a missile, not a soldier, just a piece of code. It set back the nuclear program by years. This illustrates the nature of contemporary engagement between two advanced nations that are not yet willing to risk overt confrontation. However, by 2024, the dynamics will have shifted. For the first time, Iran initiated direct military action against Israeli territory, involving a significant number of aerial projectiles. Israel's defense systems, with American and Allied support, intercepted the vast majority of these. Israel responded with a military action targeting Iranian territory. For the first time in 40 years, the two nations that had conducted operations through proxies and intermediaries engaged each other directly. Then, both sides stepped back. This brings us to the topic of Chapter 5, examining how this conflict could be resolved and what steps might be required to achieve it. The prevailing question is this: when will this situation come to an end? What will bring it to a resolution? The honest answer, if you press historians, analysts, and diplomats, is this: not soon and not easily. But let's understand why. The reasons this situation persists are complex. They are worth considering separately. The first reason is structural. Iran and Israel are engaged in a complex geopolitical dynamic within the same geographic region: Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, Iraq. These countries are not buffer zones, but highly contested areas where security interests frequently clash. As long as both countries base their security on what happens in these regions, the competition will continue. This is not about religion. It is not about ancient grievances. It is about two regional powers with overlapping strategic interests and no diplomatic framework for managing them. In theory, this is a solvable problem. In practice, however, it requires something that neither side currently has: trust. The second reason is domestic. In Iran, the Islamic Republic has built much of its regional identity around its stance on Israel. This is not just ideology, it is politics. Changing this position would require a political transformation within Iran that cannot be forced from the outside. In Israel, the security establishment has spent 4 decades developing doctrine, infrastructure, and strategic planning in response to the Iranian situation. Changing this would require a fundamental reassessment of what security means in the Middle East. Neither transformation is impossible. However, neither is imminent. The third reason is the most important. Neither side has yet found a compelling reason to stop that outweighs their current motivations to continue. Iran's regional network gives it strategic depth in the form of influence in multiple countries and on multiple fronts, providing it with multiple options. Adjusting this would require something significant in return. The foundation of Israel's security doctrine is its ability to respond to security concerns before they reach its borders. Constraining this requires guarantees that currently do not exist. This is the core of the problem. Not hatred, not religion, not ancient grievances. It is competing rational interests with no framework for resolution. So, is there a way forward? Historians point to 2 possibilities. The first is a transformed Iran. This would be a government in Tehran that defines Iranian identity and interests differently. One that views regional engagement not as confrontation, but as cooperation. This has happened before in history. It could happen again. The second is a regional framework. This would be a broader agreement involving multiple Middle Eastern states, external guarantors, and a structure that would give both sides what they need without requiring either to capitulate. Neither path is short, neither is guaranteed. However, 2,500 years of history in this area suggests the following. Cyrus freed the Jewish people. Not because he was required to, not because of pressure. Rather, he did so because he understood that genuine, lasting stability requires people to have something worth protecting. The same logic applies today. When both sides have more to gain from stability than confrontation, the confrontation ends. That moment has not yet arrived, but it has arrived before. And that ultimately is the only honest answer. Not if, but when. Two and a half thousand years. Two civilizations, the same region, the same question. This is a conflict with deep historical roots on both sides. And, as we've seen, history is open to change. If you have a different view of the region after watching this video, subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. See you in the next video.